Welcome to Fusion Fiction with your host Madhulika Ra Chauhan, where every tale brings you closer to the heart of life itself. Today, we have a brand new story for you, Buddhva. You'll be covering the big rally in Benaras, Ajay, on the 24th. Mr. Roy patted my shoulder as I leaned over the computer to complete the report before submitting it. It had been a crazy month covering rallies and discussions and talking about party manifestos and the mood in the general public. Yes, I will be, sir. They're expecting a big spectator. It's the final round of canvassing. Yes, sir, they are. Good. So let me know if you need anything. I look forward to seeing your piece. Mr. Roy smiled as he moved his heavy butt across from my table. Mr. Roy was one of the most venerable editors I had worked under. He had worked for most of the leading newspapers before moving up to the role of the editor in chief at The Guardian. A portly man in his late 50s with an overbearing stature. The lines on his clear, gleaming forehead, a sign of pure genius, had hardened with age, dividing his forehead into clear halves. Go for the real story, boldly and passionately, he would always tell me and the team. The Modi wave had been paying in this election. The incumbent Congress party had hardly been a challenge. As I moved from one place to another, following the mood of the people, I found an enthusiasm hard to miss. Modi was their leader and nothing else mattered to them. So, for the last phase, I had packed to go to the city of Kashi, or Benaras, as one would call it, to watch the drama unfold. It was touted to be the biggest battleground. I reached at sharp 10 a.m. in the morning and was greeted by the calls of chai, garam chai on the railway station as I saw the plaque marked Varanasi. I asked the local porter to take me to Hotel Ashoka, which was nearest to the election office. I wanted to keep an eye on for the largest activity from the Modi camp. Moving into the crazy rush of the road in the summer sun, just gaining strength. The road was abuzz with cycle rickshaw being pulled by lean men with sunken cheeks and big cars honking at the idle cow that had somehow managed to defecate in the middle of the road and refused to move. There were no traffic rules being followed on the narrow lanes, yet the traffic moved at a smooth pace, coexisting like the other things in the town, finding their balance in the chaos. The town famous and infamous in its own right, catering to the death wish of innumerable Hindus who thought it was a gateway to attain moksha. The widows of Benaras who had been enslaved and shut down for long, the Aghori sadhus who believed in eating human flesh, and the elongated ghats, the only place where the Ganges turned its course and became placid and calm, as if gods themselves had made it do so. It was a calm that I sought as I entered Benares, calm amongst the chaos. I moved out of the I moved out of the hotel, which was modest and neat, and everything I needed for my stay. A bed, a place to bathe, and proximity to the main town and the election office. The red mouthed, beetle chewing, smiling manager had assured me they had biped high also, and I was quite happy at the progress the town had made, with the malls and the international hotels mushrooming up on the periphery. So, how is the Hawa? I asked the manager about the political tilt the town had as I headed out. It's Kamal for sure. Modi ji is the only one this time. Aap dekhiega, he assured me, his eyes beaming with pride as he vetoed victory for the BJP party. I moved out looking to find a good tea stall where I could get the local flavor as well as to get some material for local stories on the election. The whole city was covered with saffron buntings and the picture of local party candidates running across. Each wall plastered with life size posters of the local candidate Ashok Dhawan on one side and Narendra Modi on the other, smiling and beseeching people to vote for them as the loudspeaker blared, Ab ki baar Modi Sarkar. That's when I met Buddhva, a lean man in his mid 30s, wearing a saffron scarf across his shoulder, and beaming brightly as he served tea. The faucet of the tea kettle gurgling hot tea in thick glass cups as they lined up like school children in a queue. Chai Bauji? He asked, directing his smiling eyes, spitting his beetle leaf red spit on the side. Yes, one chai, I said. You have come to see the Rath Yatra? He asked, handing the glass of piping hot tea to me. Kahan se ho? I am from New Delhi, I replied effortlessly as the warmth of the ginger tea spread inside. Patrakar ho? He asked delightedly as he hinted towards my profession. I guess my stubble and my camera must have been a giveaway. Yes, I smiled. Can you tell me the way to the party office? He looked at me with elated eyes as if I had told him I was going to give him a part of my ancestral property I owned. Wiping his hand on the red gamcha lying idly on the side, he handed over another glass of steaming tea to the customer waiting for his tea, seating on the wobbling wooden bench. Chotu, take care of the shop, he shouted towards a little boy serving tea to the nearby shopkeepers, carrying a portly metal basket to carry teacups. Chotu looked back and waved in acknowledgement. Meanwhile, I sipped my tea, dipping wheat rusk and biting into the tender softness being moistened by the tea. He came and sat near me, waiting for me to finish my tea. He seemed eager to help, a trait I was not too familiar with. I always had to pay someone something, or maybe a promise of a freebie to get the help I wanted. I had heard about the hospitable people in small towns, but it was the first time I experienced it firsthand. I gulped the remains of the tea and picked up my sling bag as he beckoned me to follow him. Aapse nahi lenge, he urged, denying the money I took out to pay for the tea and forced me to keep it back in my purse. I smiled and followed his lead as he started to walk. I smiled and followed his lead, and we started to walk towards the party office, passing the busy lanes, smiling at the rickshaw pullers, and making his way surreptitiously through the busy roads. Vehicles sped around despite open potholes and overflowing drains. We took a turn towards the narrow lane, flanked by numerous shops on both sides. Arey Buddhva, kahan chale? Howled a sweet shop owner, a pot-bellied man wearing a red tilak on his forehead, as he pushed a tray of uncooked samosas in the hot oil. Party office! He beamed as he passed. Who is he? A journalist. Patrakar hain. Hamare dost hain. I was amused at the ease of calling an acquaintance a friend in a matter of a few steps we had walked so far. There was an ease in which he befriended me, bereft of desire of anything back from me. The ease and honesty which had survived the commercialization of the small town. I smiled and nodded politely in the direction of the man and moved ahead. Buddhva seemed to be a known face in the part of the town, as everyone greeted him politely as he passed the busy shops where men, women, and children lurked, going about their daily business. Some buying, some chatting, the rest simply sitting idle watching the day pass by. We moved ahead as the lanes became even narrower and the paths became laid with bricks reminiscent of the old city. The walls had been reddened by the beetle leaf spew as they doubled up at open spittoons for passers-by. Not a wall was left barren in this election season. Slogans and posters adorned the walls. The city looked feverishly ready for election. We stopped in front of a small door just on the side of the lane. Buddhva, sensing the question on my face, remarked, "This is my home. I'll change my shirt and come. Please come inside." "I'll wait here for you," I insisted. I did not want to impose myself unduly upon him more than I had already. "Please jaiye," he insisted me again, with his warm smile, and I followed him again like a mesmerized stray following an unlikely master. The house was small but neat, with the walls painted in a greyish-blue hay and a dim, flickering tube light brightening up the dark room as there was no way for sunlight could have made its way into the room. A stale dampness hung in the air, as if the place had never heard of heat. The walls had been scribbled with miniature alphabets and cartoon characters. Paint had chipped off in several places. I made myself comfortable on the sofa, covered with an old bed sheet which looked old and in much need of a repair. An old photograph of a much younger and beaming Buddhva with a demure girl in wedding attire adorned the wall. They both looked happy. Did you bring the vegetables? Asked a female voice, breaking the silence of my thought. No, I forgot, answered Buddhva. I had told you 10 times in the morning when you left. Now there is nothing I have in the house except aloo, voiced the lady of the house. Then make them, I'll get something in the evening. Now I have to go to party office. Very important work, Buddhva answered in his matter of fact tone. Ticket दे रहे हैं क्या आपको? Spoke the lady in an agitated tone, implying the futility of her husband's going to the party office. I am very much respected there. You don't know. All big leaders know me by name. And you can just think about your vegetables and the house. Think about the country. Modi ji was also a chaiwala, you know. I was amused and embarrassed. I was amused and embarrassed to be privy to a conversation I had no intention to be a part of. Buddhva's wife, like any other wife in her predicament, placed her domestic duties above the country. But what was amusing was the way Buddhva stood dedicated to the party, keeping aside the family demands. We have a visitor at home. Now stop arguing with me, he said in an attempt to calm the spate of questions he had endured since the time he stepped in. Why did you not tell me earlier? The lady voiced in a calmer tone, slightly embarrassed. She brought a glass of water in a steel tumbler with a sari draped to cover her head. She had aged since marriage, only faintly similar to her former self, stuck on the frame in the room. Yet her face had a gleam, an almost childlike gleam of honesty. He did not tell me earlier he was bringing a visitor, she said, slightly humiliated. Will you have tea? Before I could answer, Buddhva came out of the inner room wearing a cleaner shirt, and by the looks of it, he had also oiled his hair quite amply, and answered on my behalf. We have to rush now. We can have tea later. We stepped out of the house, and I thanked the lady for the brief visit, and she nodded her head, reminding her husband about the forgotten vegetables again. We reached the party office, a well-constructed building on the main road, held by strong pillars on the side. The buntings and the slogans got louder as a group of men kept chanting the party slogan like a mantra. I could hear people hailing and greeting Buddhva as we stepped closer to the main door. Everything and everybody seems busy, holding and carrying posters, garlands, giving instructions, and the party insignia stuck on all people around. There was a general air of purpose and meaningful chaos. Why have you come so late, Buddhva? Voiced a man clad in white kurta and a Nehru jacket. Everyone has been looking for you. He came and patted Buddhva on the shoulder. Buddhva folded his hands and touched his feet in reverence. Come early tomorrow. Everyone will be here. Modi ji will also be here. Ji, he responded, his head still bent in reverence. He is a journalist. He wanted to see the party office. He spoke to the kurta-clad gentleman who eyed me and smiled benignly. Strange smile. I was too used to seeing once my profession was revealed. You come with me. Buddhva, you go and see what needs to be done, said the man in an authoritative voice. I left Buddhva's side and went with the man, who was the state party head, and everybody called him Chaubiji. Chaubiji took me around for a tour and the intizam of the big day, the day of the Rath Yatra. A jovial man, he talked to me about the plans for the big day and promises which they had made once the party came to power. Upon returning from my tour, I saw Buddhva carrying 2 bags of vegetables along with 2 other men. He smiled as he saw me. Have food and then go. I'll be making food for the party workers, he howled from a distance. I nodded in consent. The man was so engrossed in his viral enthusiasm that touched everyone around him. I wondered secretly if he would remember to carry vegetables home when he went back in the evening. Later that evening, I came back to my hotel to start working on the piece I had to send to my office. I wrote about the general stance of the city, the fervor, the idiosyncrasies, the infectious festival mood that prevailed, plastered on each wall and in their hearts. The city looked ready to be wedded and wooed by politicians and their manifestos. While I wrote about the city, what kept sweeping my heart was Buddhva, the common man, who, in the midst of all, had forgotten his family. The next day was the Rath Yatra, when the big leaders were to descend and make their journey across the city on a chariot. The city had been turned into a fortress, as security was beefed up at every corner. But being Buddhva's friend, I had an advantage. I could get near the inner circle and click to my heart's content as people marched and chanted slogans and garlanded their beaming leader. Marigold and rose petal confetti flew in the air as they moved towards the path, reaching the old Benaras and its famous river Ganges. The ghats, the ghats had been cleaned, and the pundits who usually sat to tell your luck under the sparse shade of their umbrellas had been moved. It was festive, the mood and the spectacle. There was a cheer on everybody's face as people peeped out from each place. Their windows, shops, and balconies, and the roofs where thousands stood and watched the procession. There was a dream in everyone's eye, clear and candid. Their faces gleamed as if they felt God had descended upon their city. I, an outsider, watched them, noticing their every move, their every drop of sweat they wipe across their brow uncomplainingly, listening to their heartbeat for change they had been promised. No one complained, they all were ecstatic. The next day was calmer, almost like an animal who hadn't yet stirred up from his slumber. I woke up to the sound of the city cleaners sweeping the streets, taking away the petals and garlands used the previous day. I had to move back to Delhi today. I thought of thanking Buddhva for what he had done. I checked out of the hotel and moved towards the street where I had met him first, his tea stall. Even though I had barely spent 2 days in the town, I felt heavy leaving it. I had gotten used to the small town oneness, its ability to take in a stranger and make it a part of itself, a trait big cities could never quite acquire. I moved in the lane, hoping Buddhva would have opened his shop. I could see a crowd of people huddling near his stall, waiting to be served with fresh ginger tea and rusk. He smiled as I approached. Chai Bauji? He asked as he handed over a cup of tea. How was everything at the party office? I asked as I took the tea from him. बहुत ही बढ़िया. It was very nice. Modi ji even clicked a picture with me. This time it's only him. He smiled, showing his teeth strained with the long use of betel leaf. I'm leaving today. Maybe we'll meet someday again. He called the little boy again and took care of the shop and came from behind the counter to meet me. His genuineness had touched me, and despite myself, I asked, what did you get out of all this yatra and by helping me? You neglected your family, your shop, your earning, everything. He looked at me as his face covered with a thoughtful cloud. It wasn't pensive, just a deep, solicitous look as he looked straight into my eyes. अच्छा लगता है बाबूजी, बस इतना बताए, he said, finally stating. Modi ji will come again after 5 years, and I would again serve him with my tea, just like this time. I nodded and fished from my purse to pay him for the tea. नहीं नहीं, आपसे नहीं लेंगे. I smiled and moved away from the city, mulling over the 2 days I had spent. It felt like I had been there forever. I wondered over the simplicity and honesty which made Buddhva help me and many more his life touched. Simplicity so innate it could not be touched by desire or greed, just a pure happiness which fed his heart. I picked up my backpack to go towards the station, thinking about the stories I had to write about Benaras, about the work I had come there for. But to me, the town summed up just as one person, Buddhva. With that, we come to an end to this episode. Let me know how you like the story. And also, have you ever met a person in a strange town who has changed the way you think about the visit? Share your thoughts with me on social media and write to me at madhulikarachauhan@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your stories too. Don't forget to subscribe to Fusion Fiction on YouTube and Spotify. Have fun until we meet again. This is Madhulika Ra Chauhan, and you are listening to Fusion Fiction.